What's up, guys? We're chilling with Pippa Tshabalala today. Pippa, let me first go through this list, right? It's endless. First of all, we start with lecturer, TV presenter, producer, voiceover artist, visual artist, MC, writer, magazine editor, video editor, international speaker. I mean, you've even hosted TED Talks. How crazy does it get?
I don't really think about it too much. I've done a lot of things over the years, and most of the time I've just kind of fallen into them. So it's not that
Yeah.
I've trained in some of those things, but certainly not in all of them. And I think it's something that's when the opportunity presents itself, you just kind of try and take it from there and say, okay, cool, well,
Take it
give it
on
a
board,
shot.
right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So you're a jack of all trades or Jill of all trades, right? So what in your personal life has influenced you or persuaded you to choose the various or different careers that you've chosen?
um, so when I was a kid, I always wanted to make video games. That was kind of my goal from about the time I was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I remember having this discussion with a friend of mine who's a game developer many years ago, and he sort of said, "What was the game that made you want to get into gaming?"
Yeah.
And for me, and for him, weirdly enough as well, it was Full Throttle.
Wow.
And that was something that was when you reach that point where you kind of think, this is what I want to do with my life. And so in my head, this was always kind of what I wanted to do. And it wasn't when I was at school. I'm old, so when I was at school, there was nothing to study like that. And when I kind of reached matric, my guidance counselor, which is probably the only good piece of advice he ever gave me, was said to me, you should go and study fine arts. I did art at school and things. He was like, you should go study fine arts. You sort of refine your art skills, and then you can figure out like how to take that course afterwards. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a good plan. So I did a fine arts degree, and then the goal was to go into animation. And so I then went and I did a college course for a year in animation, and then I went back to WITS and did my master's in 3D animation. And while I was at WITS, I interned at what at the time was South Africa's only gaming company, I Imagine Interactive. And I was an intern there for, not even long. It was like a holiday internship, so like a month.
Yeah.
And after 3 days, I came home and said to my boyfriend, who is now my husband, no, I don't want to do that. And he said to me, I've known him since I was 12. So he's like, I've known you since you were 12 years old. And he was like, and that has always been what you wanted to do. What do you mean that that's not what you want to do? And I'm like, yeah, I think I like the idea of it actually doing it. And I don't really want to do that for a living.
Yeah.
But then, of course, I was presented with this predicament of, well, now what do I do? Because this has been the goal, and I've been taking these steps, and so now what? And my mother was Australian, and my grandmother lived in Australia, and I went to go and visit her after I finished studying. So after I finished my master's, I went across to Australia to go visit my grandmother. And while I was there, I'd written my master's thesis on the ways that artists what is basically now indie games, but at the time it wasn't really called indie games. So it was the ways that artists use the medium of video games in their fine art practice. So that was the sort of topic. And while I was there was a gaming academic gaming conference called Free Play, and one of the women that I had been in contact with over my thesis said to me, that's fine. Turns out she actually gave my name to one of the organizers, and they asked me to speak.
Oh, wow. No pressure.
Turns out I was actually on the opening panel, which I did not realize when I accepted. And ended up on the opening panel with one very well-known like video gaming academic and the guy who held the first patent to renderware, and me. And I was like, oh, shit. And thank goodness I didn't realize at the time that I was on the panel with these people. because I think I would have been too scared to even like do anything.
Yeah.
But I was the last person to go, and I sort of talked about what I'd been studying and what are these things, and people asked questions, and I could answer the questions, and I found I quite enjoyed it. And so I ended up, when I came back to South Africa, then actually getting into lecturing. So I taught at Greenside Design Center for just under a year, like just that kind of general design theory. And then I was offered a position at WITS as a production manager, and then later as the animation lecturer. So I ended up lecturing at WITS for 3 years as honors and masters in animation. So it's funny how things kind of start. I mean, and video games have always sort of still played a very big role in my life. I mean, whether it was, while I was there, I ended up, presenting The Verge and writing about games and things like that. And I think it's just, when it's something you've always done, it just becomes a part of your life. So you don't really think about it too closely. But then through that, I ended up getting into television as well. So I kind of ended up in the TV space in various roles.
so crazy. I think that's such a cool journey that you've been on, and I think it'll open up a lot more to other people who just when it comes to in pushing through that, like it doesn't always start as cool.
No, and it's also it doesn't always start how you expect, or it doesn't always work out how you expect. But I give career talks fairly regularly, but I mean, one of the things that I always tell people is that, like, be open to opportunity. If somebody comes to you and says, I want you to do this thing, there's two ways you can react. You can either go, I can't do that. That's like, it's not my skill set. I don't know how to do that. And you can turn it down, and that's fine. You can turn it down and you move on with your life, but you'll always probably stay where you are. So you'll always kind of probably stay like, I do this. I'm an editor. I do this. And that's all you do. Or you can go,
so important.
Well, I don't really know how to do that, but I'll give it a try. And that I think is quite important, because actually everything that I've done from presenting, I had no presenting experience when I started presenting The Verge. Like, I will player first. I was teaching at WITS. My boss at the time phoned me the one afternoon and said to me, I've got this producer friend who is looking for a female host who knows a lot about video games for a TV show that they're pitching. And he asked me if I knew anyone, and I thought that you would be a good fit. Can I give him your name? And I said, okay. Like, I mean, I didn't know anything about television. I certainly had never considered myself a presenter. And I sort of said, yeah, all right, fine. And they asked me to come in for a screen test, and suddenly screen test turned into pilot. And then suddenly I was presenting a television show. And then 6 months later, I was presenting a live television show. And I could have said no. I could have been like, oh, I'm not a presenter. Sorry. Like, no. But I didn't. And I think that each step leads to another step. That's really the way. That's really the way it works.
What I think is so powerful is that, like, it's not necessarily how the opportunity looks face value anyway. So, like, any opportunity you can take, or you need to be open to something that might not necessarily fit your bill either.
Exactly. And I mean, certainly, even how I started working. So I keep go career steps. Like, this is clearly what I'm doing. But so I started presenting The Verge. I was still teaching at WITS, and then I resigned from WITS. I mean, unrelated to anything. I needed a bit of a change, and I sort of said, okay, well, I'd been there like quite a few years, and I was like, all right, I need change. And so I resigned, and the production house that presented The Verge said to me, well, do you want to come on as a producer for the show? And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I'm already like doing a whole lot of that stuff, so sure, why not? So I ended up as a producer there, and and when The Verge was ultimately cancelled, then I didn't really have another job to go to. I mean, I could have stayed there, and they'd sort of said, oh, they could find another position for me, but my contract was tied to that show. And at the time, I mean, the production company makes a lot of great shows, but they weren't doing something I was particularly interested in. So I sort of said, no, it's fine. I think I'll leave. And I applied for a job at another production house, and the guy who owned it phoned me and said to me, listen, I really want to hire you, but it's a bit more of a junior position, and you've got too much experience and things. but one of my clients is MTV based and they're looking for a new on-air producer. Can I give them your name? And I was like, yeah, sure.
Why not?
I mean, inside you're going, oh my God, MTV. But like, well, you're just like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, and I ended up going for an interview there, and then I worked at Viacom for and I was MTV and Central and Nickelodeon and BT, and I ended up as the manager of the department, until very recently. And so I think it's something that you, again, take the opportunity. And no, I didn't have probably all of the skills at the time, but I certainly learned them very quickly. And I think that if you can learn them really quickly, it's a good thing. If you learn quickly and you're open to teaching yourself a lot of stuff, which I have a tendency to do anyway, I think it works out.
Yeah. So obviously, like, you're in a very creative space, you're in a very creative field. But where do you get your specific creativity from? What motivates you? And also, how do you keep your content unique at the same time?
Look, I think it can be hard. But I think the important thing is to always kind of look and say, how can I put a twist on this? How can I make this a little bit different? Because you can do I'll use a game review as an example. It's not something I really do a lot of now, but like, I can review the game that's just standard. This is what the graphics look like. This is whatever. But people can find that anyway, really. And what they'll ultimately do is that they'll go to the person that they like their voice the most. So what is it about your voice that makes it different? Why do people want to hear from you and not from somebody else? And I've got a lot of friends in this industry, and each person has their own slightly different take on something. And sometimes, and what I find weird is that I think particularly there's a lot of incorrect assumptions about that, like, we're all at odds with each other, whereas actually a lot of us have known each other for years, and maybe one person is doing a little bit better in something, but maybe somebody else's career has taken off in a different way. So, for example, like, I think people often think that, like, myself and Sam Wright are at odds all the time. Pippa and Sam have, like, had weird things like, oh, well, something's gone to Pippa and it hasn't gone to Sam. I'm just like, that's so stupid. We both got very different voices, and we're both very friendly. So it's like, it's one of those, I don't understand those kinds of things. But you do have to have a unique voice in something, and I try and do stuff that I'm interested in. Like, if it doesn't interest me, I'm not going to give you what you're looking for. So I remember many years ago, weirdly, I was approached to be a brand ambassador for a vaping brand, and I've never smoked. I've never vaped, and it was when vapes were, like, really new. And they emailed me and said, about this thing, and they'll give me so many things of the fluid and I was like, so I sort of said, yeah, but, like, I don't smoke. And they sort of said, no, but you can get, like, nicotine free ones. And I'm like, guys, your target market is wrong here. Like, this is really, I'm literally going to give this stuff to my friends because I don't. So I think that you need to go and find someone who is a better fit for you, who's going to give you what you're looking for. And if I'm not interested in the subject matter, why would you come to me? Because I'm clearly not going to be interested in it. And that, I think, also speaks to the creativity. If you're enjoying something and you're interested in it, you're going to give it more, and you're going to make it a little bit more unique, and you're going to, which is really the key. People don't realize how much of their own personalities and their creative energy and their soul that's artists pour into those kinds of things. And having been that's very true. I cut a promo, and, like, in my head it's like, oh, it's like, this is happening, and then I see the titles must do this and must look like this, and it's like, oh, like, and you see the timing, and then you watch somebody else's thing, and you've got to be careful, particularly in my position where I'm supervising things, like, you've got to be careful to not put too much of your own creative energy and override the other person. So it's like, you've got to find a balance between telling them where things need to improve and going, well, I would do it like this because it's not you making it. So how would exactly what is their voice and what is your voice, and how do you find the fit between those two?
Sure. That's so vital, man. If you had to start over, Pippa starts over. What did you do different in your path? What did you do?
I don't think I would. Actually, my father was in insurance, and I remember when I told him that I wanted to go and study fine arts, he kind of looked at me like I was an alien. I mean, he came out of a business background, and he was like, well, I mean, how many years is that I have to pay for? Was his exact words. And I was like, cool. And what does that involve? And I was like, well, like painting and drawing and sculpture. But I honestly can't have any other field other than something in the visual arts. I've always been, I mean, I suppose at a push, I might say writing. I did at one point consider when I was studying, like maybe going into journalism or some kind of creative writing, because that's, I mean, you're very often like aware of your strengths and weaknesses, and I know that I'm a strong writer. But at the same time, I mean, I think you just have to find what speaks to you, and I am also a very visual person, so I don't know that I would necessarily do anything different. I can't see myself in any field other than the arts. It's one of those things. You're never going to find me as a lawyer. My sister's a lawyer, and that's great for her. But I'm not that person. I'm absolutely not that person.
So you said that you're a very visual person. You're a very artsy person. When you said that, the first thing that came to mind, right, was the fact that you've got so many tattoos. So obviously that very visual and artistic person doesn't just think it, but has actually imprinted it onto her body, right, for the rest of her life. Where does the inspiration for your tattoos come from?
So this is also the thing, that people automatically assume that they must all mean something, and like the guys, they don't. Sometimes you just get stuff you like. So I mean, I've been very fortunate that I've worked with a couple of like really amazing tattoo artists, and a lot of my work, all the stuff on my arms and things like that, or on the sleeve on my one arm, is done by an artist called Mr. Lucky, Milo, and he's in Cape Town, and he's done a lot of my work. And Milo gets me from that perspective. Like I could kind of say, this is kind of what I'm thinking, and he would come back with something, and he would draw it up. And I mean, I'm not a. This is also the things that like I don't design my tattoos because I'm not a tattoo designer. Like there's a very specific look and feel and way that those things need to be conceptualized, and I don't have that training. So that's I'm not a tattoo artist. But he got me, and it was one of those things that I could kind of go and say, oh, this is kind of what I want, and he would come back with something that, you know, I might make a couple of small changes, but it was very rare that I would kind of be like, no, that's perfect. And to sort of have someone who's on the same wavelength is great. But sometimes you just get stuff that you like. You see something and you find an artist that you really like, and you like the style of their work, and you kind of go and say, hey, like I want this, and they'll design something for you, and that's amazing. I mean, like I've got on my ankle of my one leg a plastic army man, you know, like it was one of those. I was like, I want this thing. And I took a little plastic army man to Tace at Fallen Heroes and said, Tace, I want a plastic army man. And he said, cool. And I went back like a week. He said, I made an appointment for, this was in the days when you could actually get in quite quickly, whereas now you can't get in at Fallen Heroes for like a year. But like I went back a couple of weeks later, and he had not drawn anything up. And I was like, but my appointment is now. And he's like, no, I'll draw it up now quickly. And I was like, oh my God. Like a lot of control issues over that. And I sort of was like, okay. And he's just sort of started sketching and used a photograph, took some photographs with some different angles and started drawing it up. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to have to let this go and just be like, all right, I know he's a good artist. Let's just trust. And it came out beautifully.
Yeah.
It's 100% point. But I mean, that doesn't have any meaning. It's just, it was cool and I wanted it. So
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Right? I mean, I've seen some of your stuff and I think it's pretty freaking amazing. But I want to move on to our next question, right? You said your passion started because you started gaming, playing games, and liking games, right? So, in over the span of your career and your life now, then, if you could become one of any game character that you've grown up with, that you've recently experienced, which one would it be?
Ciri.
Yeah?
Ciri. Yeah, from The Witcher.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. So interesting. What is the motivation and reasoning behind that?
I like her little, like, being able to like zip around and like move through time thing.
If only we could do that now.
And she just like visually she looks really cool as well. So like, you know, like she looks awesome. She can, like, you know, swing a sword, which I think is great, and she does a little like time bending thing, which I love. So, and moves between worlds. So I'm down with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure anybody would want to move between worlds, especially in this current situation that we all face. So where can people find you, Pippa? I know a lot of your fans and followers and stuff know exactly where to find you. But for the people that are watching this, right? There's a lot of people that don't know where to find you. They might be very interested in just connecting with you, chatting to you, finding a bit more about you, and obviously getting some advice from you. So where can people find you?
For that kind of stuff, I'm most active on Twitter, in which case you can find me on Twitter and on Instagram as Unexpected Pippa.
Yep.
And on Facebook, I've got a fan page on Facebook. And you'll know which one it is, as opposed to my personal profile, which I don't really accept people I don't know on my personal profile. But on my fan page, it's a picture of me as Tank Girl. So you'll know which one it is then.
Awesome. Pippa, thank you so much for giving us your time. I know your time is precious. I know you're a very busy person. I know your schedule is always packed, but thank you so much for connecting with us and obviously giving people a bit of personal insight into why you've become who you are and how you've become who you are.
Oh no, you're very welcome.
Awesome, Pippa. So guys, you've chatted to Pippa. Go follow her. Go find her on Instagram, Twitter. I know she also has she hasn't mentioned, but she does also have a YouTube page. You can go and follow there. She does some really cool stuff.
I do. I don't post a huge amount on YouTube though. Not because I don't want, but just because like I spend all day editing videos for my actual job that I don't always have the time to then be like, okay, now I'm going to go and edit some YouTube videos as well. My son also has a YouTube channel, and he's one of those. He keeps asking me to edit stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get there. Like I'll get there when I get there.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Pippa. Guys, all the links to Pippa's socials will be down in the comments below. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you so much, Pippa, once again for giving us your time. And we'll chat again soon.
Cool.
Awesome.
Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.